Madam Speaker.
Recording in progress.
There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. Honorable members, in the interest of safety for all present in the chamber, please keep your mask on and sit in your designated area. The only item on today's order paper is questions addressed to the President. There are 4 supplementary questions on each question. Parties have given an indication of which questions their members wish to pose a supplementary question. Adequate notice was given to parties for this purpose. This was done to facilitate participation of members who are connecting to the sitting through the virtual platform. The members who will pose supplementary questions will be recognized by the presiding officer. In allocating opportunities for supplementary questions, the principle of fairness, amongst others, has been applied. If a member who is supposed to ask a supplementary question through the virtual platform is unable to do so due to technological difficulties, the party whip on duty will be allowed to ask the question on behalf of their member. When all the supplementary questions have been answered by the President, we will proceed to the next question on the question paper. The first question has been asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition, the Honorable, the President.
You're a good man. Can I start now? Madam Speaker, honorable members on all sides, isn't that nice? Honorable Speaker, today marks the start of 16 days of activism for no violence against women and children of our country. This is a time when all South Africans come together to reaffirm our commitments to the end of violence that is perpetrated by men against women and children. During the next 16 days, we need, as a nation, to reflect on the progress that we have made in tackling this pandemic in our society. In particular, we need to look at the implementation of the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, identifying where there are shortcomings and address these with urgency as well as with purpose. It is important that we should work together as one nation to ensure that this year's 16 days of activism is meaningful, that it moves beyond mere words, and that it results in real change in the lives of the women of our country. Coming to the first question, Madam Speaker, as asked by the leader of the opposition. The recent load shedding, which has disrupted daily life for millions and millions of South Africans, and which has also caused great damage to our economy, is in many ways a stark reminder of the severe and intractable challenges that our electricity system faces. Load shedding is always the last resort where demand for electricity is greater than what can be produced by the system. It is necessary to prevent the collapse of the power grid and a complete blackout. At its core, load shedding is inevitable, and it has inevitable consequences of the age of many of Eskom's power plants, and many of us will know that a number of them are between 20, 30, 40, and 60 years. And this has affected the inability of our power generating company on a number of fronts. Some of the reasons have been due to precisely the age of the fleet, some the debt, and some lack of capacity, and also some of the reasons would be as a result of state capture. Eskom has to undertake the fundamental maintenance that is necessary to improve the reliability of our electricity supply. As it continues with maintenance, load shedding will remain a possibility for some time to come. But we are not simply waiting for the inevitable. We are working hard in a number of ways to fix this problem. As Eskom has been implementing a generation recovery plan to improve the availability of generating capacity and minimize the risk of load shedding, we have been undertaking a number of other measures to fundamentally change the trajectory of generation of electricity, of energy in our country. As part of Eskom's roadmap, Eskom is currently being restructured into three subsidiaries, one for transmission, another for generation, and another for distribution. The legal separation of the transmission entity is planned for the 31st of December this year, and the legal separation of generation and distribution is scheduled for next year. The Electricity Regulation Act and the electricity pricing policy is being amended to reflect the new structure of the electricity industry. The restructuring of Eskom will in many ways transform the sector and will enable greater competition and investment in new generation capacity. Some of our municipalities are already getting ready to take advantage of what flows from this transformation process and have declared the clear intention to generate power for their residents. This will remove the risk of relying on one entity that has sole monopoly on power generation in our country. This reform will have a significant positive impact on economic growth and will improve the reliability and efficiency of our electricity supply. Over the last year, we have put in place several additional measures to address these energy constraints. We have amended Schedule 2 of the Electricity Regulation Act to exempt embedded generation projects up to 100 megawatts from having to apply for a license. This will allow for more private sector investment in electricity generation capacity without any public funding and will reduce the risk of load shedding. Already a number of entities are already moving forward to take advantage of this new regulatory permit that they have been given. The other one is 8 preferred bidders have been appointed for the 2,000 megawatts mitigation IPP procurement program. These are for projects that can deliver electricity into the grid within 3 to 12 months from approval. The other one is that we have revitalized the renewable energy independent power producer procurement program with 25 preferred bidders announced in the 5th round. Together they are expected to produce around 2,600 megawatts of wind, solar, photovoltaic electricity. From the renewable energy bid window 4 projects, 1,600 megawatts had been connected to the grid at the end of June this year, and over 400 megawatts is to be connected by the end of the year. So progress is being made in as far as adding more generation capacity, which is going to be a great boost to the incapacity that Eskom is currently going through. While we can anticipate that substantial new generation capacity will come onto the grid in the near future, there are still many challenges that we need to address to secure a stable and reliable supply of energy. And these include the management of Eskom's debt, overcoming the skills deficit within the company, steadily improving municipal revenue collection, further improving Eskom's maintenance capabilities, and addressing procurement challenges and rooting out all forms of corruption and criminality, including some of the incidents that the Eskom management has been reporting, where pylons have been cut and have been disturbing the operation of the grid. There are no easy solutions to all this, whatever anyone may want to say. This is a complex problem. However, we have developed a roadmap towards a revitalized Eskom within a transformed energy industry. We are making significant progress in implementing the roadmap and are determined, Honorable Speaker, to persevere. And we're determined to persevere regardless of the difficulties and obstacles until we have achieved energy security in this country. And the good thing is that we have now ensured that energy generation will not come from one source only. On a monopoly basis, we've now ensured that there will be many other sources of energy generation. I thank you.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition from the Chamber.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Mr. President, 6 years ago, you said in this House, and I quote, "In 2 years' time, Eskom's problems will be a thing of the past. People won't even remember load shedding," unquote. 6 years later, and the government still cannot keep the lights on. It's now time to allow, surely, South Africans to solve their own energy crisis. Cape Town Mayor Jordan Hill-Lewis has pledged to make Cape Town load shedding free. The Western Cape government has also committed to assisting 6 Western Cape governments, local governments, to become load shedding free. Now, these plans depend entirely on municipalities being able to buy electricity directly from independent power producers or to generate it themselves. So I would ask you today, Mr. President, can you publicly commit that your national government will not obstruct capable local governments from procuring electricity directly from independent power producers and generating it so that we can keep the lights on, keep the factories working and creating jobs.
The Honourable, the President.
Thank you, Honourable.
Come.
Honourable Speaker, if Honourable Leader of the Opposition was listening carefully, he would have heard me say a number of the measures that we have taken and put in place include, underline include, that there should be independent generation of electricity, including by our local government entities. Now, local government entities play a critical role in the electricity system. Many of them distribute and they on-sell to residents. And whilst it took quite a long time to get finally to this decision that municipalities should be allowed to generate or be able to generate as well as to buy from independent power producers, that's exactly where we are now. So Honourable Steenhuisen is trying to force open a door that's already open. This door is already open. We've given clear direction and permission for local government to generate. And in fact, if there's anyone who wants to see municipalities like Cape Town, any other municipality succeed, that's me here. I'd like to see them immediately move on to generate electricity so that we can de-risk this risk that we have of having one entity alone generating the electricity for the entire country. And if you are, and I've seen it many times, and Honourable Steenhuisen, and I often comment to people, and whenever I fly out of Cape Town or Johannesburg to Cape Town, and at night, and you just look at the whole landscape of our nation with lit lights wherever they are lit, and you must be filled with concern that all this is being done by one company, that when that company falters, it basically means that the entire country is at risk. So what we have now done is to say, let us allow local electricity generation. And yes, an ESCOM, which has an overarching presence in the country and owns the grid, will be always on hand to supplement, to support even those local generators. When they fail, they will be able to rely on an ESCOM. So, Honourable Steenhuisen, be assured that the national government is not going to obstruct the capabilities of local government at all. So you can go to sleep peacefully there.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable JCN Mkhwanazi from the Chamber.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. My President, in the light of a long standing and complex challenges that ESCOM is now stuck in whose effects includes, amongst others, a periodic load shedding and unsustainable high level of debt. My question is, what role can ESCOM play in the large-scale supply of energy amidst the fast-changing energy environment? And secondly, in what ways will these measures allow ESCOM to generate revenues to reduce its soaring debt and to afford its maintenance costs? Thank you.
The Honourable the President.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. ESCOM still has a very critical role to play in many, many ways. Firstly, to improve itself. in terms of management, in terms of improving maintenance, and in terms of just managing the procurement processes that it needs to embark on to ensure that it has all the turbines and all the various other products and services that it has. But at the same time, Eskom has also decided that they want to get into the renewable space. And that, in my view, has been quite an important and significant decision. So they now need to build capacity to get into the renewable space and be able to compete with all other entities that are now in the renewable space. What we need to see is healthy competition on the generation of energy, when all of them will channel the energy that they generate into the national grid, into the transmission grid, and the distribution can also be managed in differentiated ways. And this is where a number of local government entities have actually demonstrated that they have great capabilities of distributing electricity. So we also see Eskom being able to manage its debt much more effectively to ensure that they collect revenue. And they are embarking on really good initiatives, working together with local government entities around the country, of enabling the local municipalities to also manage their debt properly and to ensure that there is collection. So that level of cooperation that should exist between Eskom as the generator, as well as the transmitter, with municipalities, is exactly what Eskom needs to improve a great deal on. And I have confidence that they will be able to do precisely that. And of course, the other one is to attract people with good skills who will be able to manage the electricity provision to our nation properly. Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker.
The third supplementary question will be asked by Honourable N.F. Shivambu through the virtual platform.
No, thank you very much, Speaker. It's quite obvious now that one of the biggest challenges of Eskom is the subjective incapacity of its current leadership, the board, the CEO. The CEO even came to Parliament to say that Eskom is a dead horse. And you seem to be not paying attention to the fact that the people who are leading Eskom now are not capable of rescuing it from the crisis that we are facing. When are we going to see the change of leadership in Eskom, because they're not capable of reviving it? Unless if your purpose is to decapacitate Eskom, to mutilate it so that we can create space for the independent power producers to continue to ridiculously profiteer out of energy generation in South Africa. You had made commitments before that there won't be privatization of Eskom. But effectively what is happening now is the privatization of energy generation for the benefit of few businesses, some of whom are the people that are associated with you. That is the question. What do we do with the leadership of Eskom that is incapable, has demonstrated that it fails dismally?
Member Shivambu, you are out of order. Your time is up and you haven't asked a question. Thank you very much. The last supplementary... No. Excuse me. I will be advised here. But Honorable Shivambu finished his minute and went on to negative 30, right? Without asking his question. Hence my statement that you haven't asked a question.
Chair, point of order.
Chair, I will be assisted by the table. Thank you.
Chair, point of order.
No, you are out of order, Speaker.
Chair, point of order. Chair.
Honorable, you may take a seat. Honorable member,
Point of order.
you may take a seat. Take a seat. Now, the advice I am receiving here, Mr. President, is that you may respond to the question. The Honorable the President.
Question, because we're saying the Deputy President ask the question. Speak.
The Honorable the President, Honorable Mkalipi,
Point of order.
please don't do that. Thank you very much. The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, thank you. In relation to the question that Honorable Shibambo raised with regard to the leadership of ESCOM, both at management and board level, I'd like to say that this is a matter that we continuously look at. We look at the capability, the effectiveness of the leadership that, yes, resides in ESCOM, not only in ESCOM, in all our state-owned enterprises. And we evaluate that against a whole number of indicators. Now, ESCOM has been one of the most unfortunate entities in that, I would say in the past 15 years, they've almost had a new CEO almost like every 18 months. And Honorable Speaker, we need to examine precisely what the management is trying to do. What do? They work with a whole number of what I would call blue chip companies that help them service the plants that we have. And because the plants are aged, the plants are old, and they tend to break down quite often. And I've said in the past, there is no deliberateness. There is not a single key leader in ESCOM who wakes up one morning and says, I am going to break down one of the power stations. These break down because they are aged. And therefore, what we are seeking to do is to balance, to maintain the fleet that we have, keep it properly maintained, and at the same time, build new capability, which we are continuing to build because there is a deficit of some 5,000 or so megawatts. And once we can breach that gap through new build, as they maintain the current fleet, and as we also retire some of the power stations that we have or repurpose them, we will then be able to manage our energy properly. As I said in my main input, yes, load shedding for the meantime is going to be a key challenge that our economy faces. But we are resolving the problem, and that includes being able to bring in more skilled people and continuing to evaluate those that we have from the board and from the management as well. So this is something that is top of mind for us on a continuous basis. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable N. Singh from the chamber.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you very much, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, thank you for your response. But I think we all have to agree that maintenance over the years at ESCOM has been shocking, to say the least. Now, somebody has to be held responsible for that. I mean, we can't just keep complaining about the lack of maintenance over the years. Who is going to be held responsible, and what are we going to do? But having said that, Honorable President, it is a well-known fact that the CFO of ESCOM at a SCOPA hearing recently said that they owe over 400 billion rand. And they are in serious debt, and if government does not bail them out, there might be no light at the end of the tunnel. And also that putting money into ESCOM will just be putting money into a bottomless pit. Has government considered what kind of financial assistance, if any, is going to be provided to ESCOM? And given that ESCOM is one of the biggest contributors of pollution in our country, And COP26 proved that, where Eskom is really, 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 causing lots of problems in terms of climate change in our country, Honorable President.
The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, Eskom is carrying the biggest debt burden of all our state-owned enterprises. And this is debt that has accumulated over a number of years, but also accumulated as we've had overruns of costs and so forth with the new build that we've had. And we are now stuck with this debt. And we all agree that Eskom is just too big to fail, because a failing Eskom would be catastrophic for our economy. It will also be catastrophic for the lives of our people all around. So therefore, Eskom is our collective problem that we've got to solve. And it doesn't help us. It doesn't help us to sit and not do anything. It doesn't also help us to be on podiums and be accusatory and accusing people all the time. What we should be doing is to find ways of addressing the problem. Now, the most interesting part is that non-government entities have been discussing how best the Eskom debt can be dealt with. And this is in the form of business, this is in the form of trade unions and community-based organizations who've been coming forward with really meaningful proposals on how best we can deal with the debt. And government, on its part, has been working with Eskom, working with those entities to try and find a way of dealing with the debt. A number of proposals abound. Proposals include, yes, take on the debt on your sovereign balance sheet, and some of the proposals are, find a way of selling the debt, and so forth and so forth. Now, all these proposals are being looked at, and we should be able to find a solution, because Eskom, as I've said, is just too big to fail. And I'm rather pleased that a number of South Africans are looking at this rather positively and trying to find a solution. And we will come out with a solution. And of course, the good thing is that Eskom on its own is forward-looking, it's repositioning itself and repurposing itself. Whereas in the past, Eskom was just stuck as a coal-fired generation company, as well as, yes, a little bit of nuclear. They're now saying we now need to be broader, much broader than that, and find ways of entering the renewable energy space. Now, that is a forward-looking company that we need to support. We need to support, yes, the leadership as well, as they try to solve the many problems that they face. So Eskom is, yes, the biggest risk our country faces, and we've got to collectively find solutions to address this risk. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Question number 14 has been asked by the Honorable J.S. Malema.
Honorable Speaker, climate change is an existential crisis. As a country, we are a signatory to the Paris Agreement to combat climate change, and as such, we have obligations to contribute our fair share to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The same Paris Agreement places an obligation on developed economies that are responsible for some 76% of historical emissions. They have a responsibility which they signed up to, which everybody agreed they have to provide support to developing economies to adapt to the effects of climate change and transition to lower carbon future. Now, the political declaration announced at COP26 in Glasgow gives effect to some of these obligations, both our own obligations as a country and those of other developing economy countries, as well as the obligations of developed nations, economy nations. In terms of the political declaration, the US, UK, Germany, France, and the EU have offered, underline offered. They've said we want to put this offer on the table in line with our obligations as agreed to at COP26. And they've offered an initial amount of $8.5 billion, which is equivalent to around 133 billion rand, to support South Africa's just transition efforts, a process that we have agreed that we will go through, a transition to lower our own greenhouse emissions. This support will take the form of various financial instruments, ranging from grants to concessional loans at very low interest rates. This funding will be mobilized over the next 3 to 5 years with a view to longer-term engagement. If we finally reach agreement and accept the offer. This is an initial commitment which may increase as discussions progress and further funds are identified. This commitment from international partners does not mean we need to accept the offer as such, or that we need to accept any unfavorable terms, especially if the financing arrangements could impact negatively on the public fiscus of our country. The political declaration is in line with the obligation on the part of developed economies as historical beneficiaries of high carbon emissions to provide support to developing economies to transit to lower carbon futures. The pace and extent of decarbonization in South Africa will be determined by the financial support available, and it will also have to take into account our own country's social and economic challenges. In other words, this is not a blank check. It has to take into account our own situation, challenges, and everything else. We will continue to chart our own development
And then,
Seems we got disconnected.
Madam Speaker, point of order. Madam Speaker.
We can't hear a thing, Madam Speaker.
No, it's just us, man.
Honorable members, it's Tanya Lyons from the National Assembly table. I'm in touch with the table. I'm trying to reconnect us.
We don't have anyone.
Are we coming back there?
Mr. McPherson, I have contacted our technical people and they are busy resolving the problem.
Yes, Julius here. Are they stopping the sitting because we are missing out now?
Mr. Julius, I have alerted the table as well that we have lost connection. So I would assume that they would pause. I can't tell you certainly, but I have alerted them.
No, we're not losing it out because the president of EFF is supposed to speak. So it's disconnected.
Relax, all of you. We are waiting.
I'm not talking to you. I don't account to you. Please.
But relax.
I'm the whip of the EFF here. I'm not the whip of the ANC. So no one will tell me to relax here.
Yeah, April, you must relax. Turn your microphone off, April.
Recording stopped.
Relax lapho man. Akakwazi
Hello, yeah.
You've lost so much. You can't relax. You've lost everything. How can you relax? You've lost it, man.
I told her Dean. Julius Ngarutampan Sobrak.
Yeah, he's getting old, that one.
Yes, and West Rent is mine today, tomorrow. Watch it.
We're going to clobber you, Jack. Relax.
You've got wet lettuce now after the elections. The table, this is looking like sabotage now.
Honourable members, I am in contact with the table at the moment, and they are checking the server, the NA table server. Honourable members, we are admitting the chamber now.
Are we back?
Thank you very much, honorable members. Our sincere apologies for that. Can you hear me?
Recording in progress.
Am I audible, honorable members?
Yes.
You are?
Yes, you're audible, Speaker. Long live.
Thank you very much, honorable members. Now, the first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable J.S. Malema through the virtual platform. But honorable members, just a
Madam Speaker,
friendly reminder, honorable members, the first supplementary question, which is raised by the person who had originated the question, has 2 minutes, but subsequent supplementary 1 minute, honorable members. I just thought we've been away from Parliament and maybe we've forgotten that. It's 1 minute. So for honorable member now, because it's the first supplementary question, you have 2 minutes. Thank you, Honorable Malema. You may proceed.
no, Honorable Speaker, I didn't hear half of the response of the President because we got cut.
Honorable, okay, thank you very much, Honorable Malema for drawing my attention to that. Honorable President, I learned from the table that it is true, actually, that the members who are on the virtual platform could not hear half of your response. Our apologies once more, Honorable President. You may start all over again.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I will do it as a favor to Honorable Malema. And I said in response to his question that climate change is an existential crisis that we face as many other countries are facing around the world. As a country, we should remind everyone, a signatory to the Paris Agreement to combat climate change, and as such, we do have obligations as South Africa to contribute our fair share to reducing greenhouse gas emissions. The Paris Agreement places an obligation on developed economies that are responsible for some 76% of historical emissions to provide support to developing economies to adapt to the effects of climate change and transition to a lower carbon future. The political declaration announced at COP26 in Glasgow gives effect to some of these obligations, both our own obligations as well as those of the more developed economy countries. In terms of the political declaration, the US, UK, Germany, France, and the EU have put on the table, offered an initial amount of $8.5 billion, which is equivalent to around 131 billion rand to support our just transition efforts. This support will take the form of various financial instruments, including grants and concessional loans. This funding will be mobilized over the next 3 to 5 years with a view to longer-term engagement. This is an initial commitment, and it is an offer that has just been put on the table, which may increase as discussions progress and further funds are identified. This commitment from the international partners does not mean that we need to accept, firstly, their offer or any unfavorable terms, especially if the financing arrangements could impact negatively on our own fiscus. The political declaration is in line with the obligation on the part of the developed economy countries as historical beneficiaries of high carbon emissions to provide support to developing economy countries to transition to a lower carbon future. The pace and the extent of decarbonization in South Africa will be determined by the financial support that will be available and will take account of our own country's social and economic challenges. So all of this is conditional on us being able to get the financial support, as well as our very clear plans on how we address our social and economic challenges. We will continue to chart our own developmental path and continue to affirm our right to develop our economy in a sustainable and inclusive manner. A significant portion of funding is expected to be used for Eskom's just transition plans, which includes the decommissioning of some of the power stations whose life has come to an end. And ordinarily they would have been decommissioned, and that would have been the end. The town would close, the power station would close, but we are now saying, with funding, we will be able to recalibrate those power stations, repower them, repurpose them, and this we will be able to do in line with our own Integrated Resource Plan 2019. Funding will also be allocated towards the development of new sectors, such as electric vehicles and the implementation of the green hydrogen sector master plan. More importantly, the declaration recognizes that a transition to a lower carbon economy must also address the needs of workers as well as the needs of communities that reside in areas where our power stations are. Now, funding offered through the political declaration will be used for targeted programs of reskilling, of upskilling, creating employment, and providing other forms of support to ensure that workers, women, and young people are the major beneficiaries of our shift to a greener future. Now, this is where our key role players, trade unions, business communities, now have to buckle down and properly design what this transition is going to be and what the key elements of that transition should be, so that out of this transition we should be able to leave no one behind. Achieving our nationally determined contribution targets and implementing the IRP 2019 requires significant investment. A joint negotiations team will be established, and as I was saying, we will have top-class financial people from both the public sector as well as the private sector, and will include trade union representatives as well, who are going to buckle down and make sure that all these elements of this transition are properly negotiated, as well as whether, in the end, this offer that has been put on the table is the type of offer that will take us forward or not. This process is expected to be finalized over months. So I've said that it needs to be done in the most transparent manner so that South Africans must know precisely what this just transition is going to be about, as well as whatever funding that will be provided, both from the local market as well as the offshore market. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable J. Malema through the platforms.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Mr. President, renewable energy supplies just about not again. What's happening to this thing?
Honorable Malema, your network seems to have a problem. We've lost you. Honorable Malema, can you hear me?
Video
Honorable Speaker, the Commander-in-Chief is joining in now. Like the system had done what it did before, so he's joining in now. He will make the supplementary question now.
Do you want to ask the question for him?
He's going to join in to ask the question now.
Can we move from Konga? Honorable Malema, may we proceed to entertain another question, Honorable Malema? Honorable Shivambo, you are connected. Maybe you should take the slot and raise the question on behalf of Honorable Malema.
Let's move, Speaker. We can't wait for Malema here.
Honorable Shivambo,
Eban.
will you please take the slot on behalf of Honorable Malema?
Honorable Speaker,
Yes. You may proceed, Honorable Member.
The president is joining in. Can you take the next supplementary?
No,
Can you
no, we can't wait forever for
supplementary
him to
question is
join.
coming?
No.
Okay,
Shut up, when I'm not talking to you.
honorable members,
Two.
honorable members, I suggest we proceed. If there isn't a member from your party who would like to raise a question on behalf of the Honorable Malema, then I proceed to allow another member, Honorable MG Mahlaule, to raise a supplementary question.
Thank you very
Speaker.
much.
Is it a point of order?
Yes, Speaker, I was rudely disrupted by your members there.
No.
My
Honorable-
suggestion was, yes, Speaker, just like we usually do with all parties, my suggestion was, whilst the president is joining in, please take another follow-up question. When he comes in, then he's going to ask his question.
That's what we are doing. Thank you very much, Honorable
Yes.
Member. Honorable Mahlaule.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Mr. President, in light of the view that in Africa, we have so many examples of states whose performance until the mid-1970s would have qualified as developmental states, in the sense conveyed by the current definitions, but which now seem anti-developmental because the donor conditionalities of Western countries brought the expansion of their economies to a halt. What approach is being used to ensure that the government continues to perform its socio-economic transformation agenda without facing major opposition from donor conditionalities insofar as the 131 billion investment in a just transition is concerned? Thank you very much.
The Honorable, the President.
Honorable Speaker, I'm back in case you are looking for me.
Yes. Will you hold and allow the President to respond to the question by Mr. Mahlaule? Honorable President.
Honorable Speaker, in terms of negotiating with those who have offered this funding, we will make sure that part of the funding is grant without any form of conditions, and quite a lot of it is concessional funding, which is less onerous than just straight loans. And if any part of it is categorized as loans, that the conditions are not onerous on our fiscus, and make sure that we are never lumped with conditions that will debilitate our developmental initiatives. We will be seeking to have negotiations in a very transparent manner, where we will not just want to roll over and accept any conditions. The last thing we want to do is to be lumped with conditions that are going to restrict our ability, yes, to continue with our developmental path. So we are going to be absolutely careful. And it is for this reason that I said we will bring into the team people from the private sector, the public sector, maybe the trade unions, as well as government, of course, to ensure that the agreements that we arrive at are agreements that are going to be beneficial to us. And we will also make sure that there is quite a lot of transparency in all these negotiations. So we are not going to be handing over everything to those funders. And a number of them will be development funding institutions from those various countries. And these are institutions that in the main the likes of ESCOM and many others have already been dealing with over time. So we will be dealing in an arena that a number of the key role players in our country have been working with. So I don't really foresee us being shortchanged in any way. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Member Malema, are you ready?
Yes, I'm available. And my apologies, Speaker and Mr. President. We are challenged here with network. Mr. President, I was a bit worried when some of these developments were announced by a president of another country, which somehow suggested that they were undermining the sovereignty of our country, because such a development ordinarily should have been presented to us and the world by our president. Mr. President, renewable energy supplies just about 12% of the energy needs of the United States, with the rest coming from petroleum, natural gas, and coal. They are the biggest emitters of greenhouse gases in the world. A similar trend can be found in the United Kingdom and in Europe. These countries have developed to the extent they have because of their exploitation of fossil fuels, developing themselves while leading us to the climate situation we find ourselves in. Why are these countries, who are the biggest emitters of greenhouse gases in the world, not committing to make the transition from fuel?
Point of order. Can I raise on a point of order?
Why must it be responsibility of the developing world to clean up the mess done by developed world? What guarantees do we have that our transition to renewable energy will not compromise own developmental goals? Speaker?
So, Honorable Malema, my apologies, there's a point of order. Point of order, yes?
No, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I'm saying I agree that Honorable Malema must be able to ask a question. But it must be noted in this parliament that Honorable Malema and the EFF have sold out this country. The EFF is the youth movement.
Point of order.
They've sold out all the male sports. They've sold out everything. And it must be noted as such that anybody who votes for the EFF in this country is voting for the GA, and it must go on the annals of history that Honorable Malema is a senator.
You have not sold out on the land now.
Point of order. The fool is busy talking.
On a point of order, Speaker.
Honorable member, do that again, and you don't listen, I will request the chamber to remove you from the system. You are disrupting the processes. This is an irrelevant issue to what we are discussing right now. The President.
Speaker.
But I was still on the platform.
Speaker, I'm terribly sorry to interrupt the Honourable Malema as well as the President, but there is a terribly strong smell of burning coming into the chamber. And could that please be addressed, because the smell of burning is getting strong.
Sergeant, will check where the smoke or burning is coming. Honorable Malema, you may continue.
Mr. President, I asked my question, then I got interrupted here by some clown. Thank you.
The Honorable
Speaker, point of order.
No.
We are not going to allow this behavior from Honorable Malema. He can't be saying that and it's allowed.
Honorable.
You can't be allowed yourself because you sold out on the land.
He must know that thing. He can't be.
Speaker.
Honorable. Now remove you from the system. Will you please remove Honorable Kula from the system? The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'm able to answer the question posed by Honorable Malema. Honorable Malema, you are absolutely right. The countries in the north are the biggest emitters of greenhouse gases, and a number of them are still reliant on fossil fuels to generate their energy. And through the devastating effect they've had on the climate, we now have climate that is changing. But the unfortunate part of it is that it is changing for all of us. They damaged, in the most part, they damaged the climate, and we are now paying for the damage that they have caused to the climate, and its effects are being felt by those who participated least in effecting that damage. We are depicted as number 12 in the world as an emitter of greenhouse gases. The effect that climate change is having is not only just what we may want to believe, it's much more overarching than that. We now have strange climatic phenomena that have an effect on our own continent, in our own region. We now have floods that even our forebears never saw before, droughts that go on for years and years. And we are currently having a drought here in our own country, in the southern part, where there's a shortage of water. And there are many other climatic disasters that are befalling us. So in the end, it does behove on us as well, as countries that have been least responsible for damaging climate, because we are the most affected, and we are worse because our developmental challenges are much bigger than those who have damaged the climate in the main. So in the end, we also have to do something to address climate change. And in addressing it, we've had to declare precisely what we are going to do. And the damage is not only, if you like, on the landscape of our country and all that, it's also when it comes to health. The health conditions of many of our people, particularly in our coal mining areas and electricity generation areas, is just continuously at risk because of reliance on fossil fuels. And evidence of this was possibly not available many years ago, but it's becoming more and more available. So it is a serious problem that we too have to address. And in addressing it, we also have to rely on the international or global agreements that have been arrived at in Paris and many other places, Kyoto and all that, where the more developed economies have accepted responsibility, and therefore we must make them live up to those responsibilities. Hitherto, they've been dilly-dallying and not being too willing to make real commitments. And now we must make sure that they live up to the commitments they've made. And in doing so, as I said earlier, we should not shortchange ourselves. We should not enter into agreements that are going to be detrimental to our own developmental path. We should enter into agreements that are going to advance our own situation. If, for instance, in addressing the transition, say, for instance, of an ESCOM in a power station town, we must make sure that the workers' situation is looked after. There must be a just transition that addresses their situation through reskilling, upskilling, and in any other way. And the communities as well, the livelihood of communities must also be factored in. So our approach is going to be developmental. It's not just going to be a financial approach. We will want to approach this whole process in a holistic manner so that our people benefit and they are not left behind. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Honorable members, there's no reason to fear. Somebody was smoking at the courtyard, and so we are sorting that one out. So we will not adjourn, we continue, but we've opened the doors. Thank you very much, Mr. President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable KRJ Mishwe from the Chamber.
Thank you, Speaker. Mr. President, while the ACDP fully supports the transition from coal to clean energy, we nevertheless have two major concerns. The first concern is the impact of the hundreds of thousands of job losses on the families of mine workers and their communities. Renewable energy jobs will not be created overnight, and retrenched workers will not be upskilled for the newly created jobs in that sector. The second concern is how our country will afford to repay concessional loan, as our current debt is almost 4 trillion rands. So my question, Mr. President, is how are coal-dependent regions going to be supported to ensure that they don't become ghost towns, and that what is government is going to do to prevent retrenched workers and their families from ending up in the streets and thereby increasing unemployment? Thank you.
The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Our path to a just transition is aimed at precisely addressing what Honorable Mishwe is raising now. As I was saying in my main input of the reply, that it is a situation of workers, situation of our communities, in areas where we will have to transition from fossil fuels to renewable energy. Now, in the first instance, one of the things that, as I said, we are going to look at is how, for instance, Eskom, which through its power stations is the dominant player in particular towns in Mpumalanga and in Limpopo, how Eskom, as it moves towards decommissioning some of those power stations, how those power stations can be repurposed, can be refabricated as to be more useful either through gas or otherwise, or either through other forms of renewable energy. And that is a process that is now being looked at very, very closely. In fact, there is a project plan that is just focusing on that. But it needs to go beyond just the technical part. It needs to look at the human part, the workers, as well as communities. And it also has to look at new opportunities that will come forward with renewable energy future. Because in other countries, we have found that as certain areas of various countries transition from fossil fuel generation to renewables, new forms of sectors begin to emerge. And we believe that that too will emerge with us. We're already thinking about electric cars. We're already thinking about green hydrogen. And that in itself, in terms of the discussions that we're having with the private sector, demonstrates that there are enormous opportunities. As I said, part of the funding will have to go towards reskilling and retraining some of the workers. I participated in an ILO study with the former Prime Minister of Sweden, where we looked at the future of work and how workers can be reskilled, retrained, and upskilled so that they are fit for purpose for the new economies that are coming. And let us not forget that as the world, has evolved, as we've moved from one revolution to another, from industrial revolution, now we are in another revolution. Of course, jobs have been lost, but jobs have also been created. Now, what we want to do is to make sure that we maximize the creation of new jobs, new technologies, new forms of doing things, and new sectors. Now, we, even through our economic reconstruction and recovery plan, we're looking at how
Can you make a plan to come in next week?
how we can capitalize on new sectors of our economy and really boost them up. And we often find that there's new money, there's good money that is willing to come into these new sectors because it creates new markets. So even on the energy side, as we will have to decommission, unfortunately, we'll have to decommission some power stations and coal mines. There is a future that we can look forward to as we recalibrate those power stations and we create new sectors and new economies. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable V. Zungula through the virtual platform.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, I think my question is more or less the same what Honorable Meshwe asked, and you have already have some responses. My question is, what effects does phasing the usage of coal have in the economy and broader jobs market in all dependent sectors? And what mitigation strategies that the President have in place in addressing with effects? That is why I was saying the President have more or less responded to that. It is the same question as Honorable Meshwe. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The President.
Well, Honorable Speaker, I thought the Honorable Member Zungula was saying that I have already answered the question. And I'm rather glad that she listened very carefully and concedes that the question has been addressed and answered to. So that makes me happy and saves me some time as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Yes, Honorable Member.
Honorable Speaker, just before we pass this question, during the exchange between Honorable Members Malema and Honorable Member Akula, it looks like an offensive language was used during that time. But because it was done in a home language, Honorable Malema could not understand it. The only languages I'm comfortable with is Zulu, Sotho, Afrikaans, and English.
Thank
so
you,
what I request the Speaker to do, because we cannot have an offensive language on the record of Parliament, I request the Speaker to look at the Hansard.
We will look into it, Honorable Member. I will request the table to check with Hansard, and then we'll come back and report. Thank you very much. Honorable Members, we now proceed with question number 15, which was asked by Honorable S.S. Somyo. The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, thank you. The current situation in local government, including the unprecedented number of councils where no party has an outright majority, is the product of a democratic process that we should be pleased about. Whichever way it could have gone for any of our parties, we should just be pleased that the people of our country have expressed their will. On the 1st of November, the people of South Africa freely and fairly and in conditions of peace and stability voted for the people and parties they want to represent them in municipalities. This is the will of the people, and we must accept it whether we are happy with it or not, whether we like it or not. While there are certainly particular challenges associated with so-called hung municipalities, these challenges are by no means insurmountable, and they are no means novel to us. It happens all over the world. And while the country's experience of coalition or minority government at a local level has not always been favorable, it is essential that we nevertheless make these councils work for the sake of the people of our country who reside in these municipalities. We must ensure that these councils provide the services that people need and create an environment conducive to the growth of businesses and the creation of employment. Ultimately, this will depend on the political will, the commitment and capabilities of the parties and individuals running these municipalities. As national government, we are firmly committed to support all municipalities in ensuring that they fulfill their responsibility to the people that they were elected to serve. I took time yesterday and day before to phone the new metro mayors, whichever party they belong to, and congratulated them. And said to them, I look forward to working with them when they will be attending the Presidential Coordinating Council on an ongoing basis. And invariably, all of them were pleased with that offer, and some of them even said, we didn't expect you to call because we took the metro from your party. And I said, no. I'm phoning as the President of the Republic of South Africa. It is significant that on the day of the local government elections were held, the Municipal Structures Amendment Act number 3 of 2021 came into effect. The interventions that were introduced through these amendments will go a long way towards addressing many governance challenges that have been experienced by municipalities in our country, and to ensure improved and sustained service delivery for all our communities. The Amendment Act strengthened the Code of Conduct of Councillors and makes it mandatory for all municipal councils to establish municipal public accounts committees, what they call MPAC. The purpose of these committees will be to review various reports and thereafter make recommendations to the municipal council. The Ministry of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, the National Treasury, and SALGA will soon, after all municipal councils have been constituted, embark on an intensive councillor induction program. I intend in the presidency to set up a unit that is just going to be focusing on our work as a nation on local government, so that we bring more attention to the work that is being done, how the money is spent, and all that. Because I often get concerned that sometimes money is returned to the fiscus without having been spent from local government entities. Now, we want all those elected councillors, especially those that are serving for the first time, to receive the appropriate orientation to effectively perform their duties as councillors, and where appropriate, the specific roles and responsibilities that are entrusted to municipal office bearers such as a speaker, a mayor, executive mayor, or whip, should be responsibilities that they will execute with a great commitment. We are confident that these interventions that we are making will help to strengthen governance at local level. However, the achievement of stable, well-managed municipalities that provide quality services to all residents depends on effective collaboration between all political parties, all stakeholders, and the different spheres of government. And I've been particularly pleased to have heard many of the metro mayors saying that they are going to extend a hand to the various political parties in their sphere so that they can work together. And this is the time when we at local government level collectively collectively should put our people first and the interests of our parties last. If this happens, we will have much better service delivery in our local government sphere. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable S.S. Somyo from the Chamber.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Nkosi kakhulu, Mr. President.
Of course.
Indeed, the worrisome factor is the recent past, where our people have experienced instability and the fragility of the system, something which we should concern ourselves with. I'm so proud of your assertions that indeed the centrality of the people is the core of our own observations. Whether you're coming from any political party, this is the time to serve our people, and we need to commit to that. We have made it through length and breadth of our own country where that commitment has been made. Are you today prepared to face these political parties and say to them, go with me to make this commitment work, to ensure the fragility of the system becomes a thing of the past? Those who arrogate power for their own interest, they should see through that voice that indeed people have spoken. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you.
The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I'm able to say to Honorable Somyo that one of the reasons that made me call these metro mayors, and I will, time permitting, be willing to call the other hundreds of other mayors, tens and tens of them, to congratulate them and also to give them a commitment that from national government level, we are prepared to work with them, to support them. One of the reasons why I decided to do so was precisely, in many ways, to depoliticize that local government sphere, much as I think all parties went through the length and the breadth of the country on a party political ticket. In the end, our people are just interested in service delivery. They want service delivery, and if they can get their water, their roads, and the electricity, and a clean town, and refuse removed, and all that, our people will feel that leaders are doing everything they can to look after them. So I would be willing, Honorable Somyo, even as I go to various towns from time to time, be willing to go with leaders of other political parties if they will be willing to do so. They are often not too keen to do so, so maybe you may want to whisper to them that there's really no danger in going around with a person like me. But I will be willing to work with them, and that willingness to work with them is going to be demonstrated in the next few months as we will be getting a better focus on local government through our own office with a view of assisting and supporting the work that local government leaders will be effecting to advance the interests of our people. So the answer is yes. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable A.M. Sheikh Imam through the virtual platform.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mr. President, these hung municipalities are certainly going to go through a roller coaster ride as political parties jostle for positions, power control, resources. Corruption, looting will be on the rise. Now, Mr. President, and you know that the private sector has invested a lot in these elections. What additional measures can be put in place to ensure that we get value for money at local government level, so more money will be available to deliver services rather than going into the pocket?
one gone. Honorable Sheikh Imam. Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Have, have you heard me, Honorable Speaker? Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Yes, proceed, Honorable.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Mr. President, these hung municipalities are certainly going to go through a roller coaster ride as political parties jostle for positions, power, control, resources. Corruption and looting will be on the rise. As we know, that the private sector has invested heavily in these elections and are expecting something in return. What additional measures could be put in place to ensure we get value for money so that we can provide better services to the people rather than a few individuals enjoying a monopoly in these municipalities controlling all these tenders?
The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, what I was saying earlier in my main reply referred to some of the measures that we will want to put in place. Firstly, we will obviously want all councillors to be properly inducted, and that induction process will also be accompanied over time through a training process, so that we don't only end up with induction but also training, so that they get to understand more fully their own responsibility. Beyond that, I also spoke about the amendments we have now introduced in the Municipal Structures Act, which is going to enhance the governance at that level so that we have committees such as MPAC that are going to look very closely at how money is spent and what it is spent for and root out any form of corruption. But the other important thing, of course, is that local government must also look beyond the horizon a bit. I'd like to see the leaders see themselves as people who are going to promote investment in their own towns, cities, and metros. If possible, they should each establish an investment office, which will just be focusing on advancing and promoting and attracting investments in specific towns. I often refer to a country like China, which has grown phenomenally, and I've often been told that the growth was largely generated at local government level, because, as I often say, that is where investment takes place. Investment does not take place here in Parliament or at the union buildings, it is at the local level. So if municipalities can find a way, and they must find that way, of working very closely together with the private sector and make sure that their cities, their towns, and their metros become areas that are conducive for investment to take place. Local government leaders must do everything so that they attract investment rather than repel investment. They should come up with creative ways of attracting investors to their own towns and making sure that the investors stay in their own towns to create jobs. They must do a variety of things. They must look after the roads, electricity, the cleanliness of the town, and they must have a very open and inviting type of disposition to potential investors. And in some cases, they must go out and seek investors and bring them in, but run a clean government as well, where corruption does not have a space at all. And if they can do that, investors will start coming in, because investors want a conducive environment. They also want certainty. The regulations and the rules and the incentives must be such that they can attract investors to come to the town, city, or metro. If they can do that, Honorable Imam, I believe that we will have a local government dispensation that will also begin to lift the economy of our country. And as I said, and I repeat, investments take place at a local level. They do not take place at a national level. All we do at a national level is to create that environment and the climate, and similarly, the responsibility rests on the shoulders of local government leaders to make sure that investments do take place and job creation does ensue. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Leader of the Opposition from the Chamber.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you very much, Mr. President, for the maturity of your response, and we associate ourselves with it. But the question that the Honourable Member has asked is frankly a deflection, because we all know that the hung municipalities are not the real problem in South Africa. If we look at the recent report released by your COGTA Minister, there are 64 municipalities on that list that are listed as dysfunctional. Barely a few of them are hung or minority government councils, but those lists are jam-packed with ANC majority coalitions. And you're right about local investment. And when people vote with their feet and businesses vote with their feet, in places like Lichtenburg and Standerton, they're leaving because those ANC councils have failed to deliver basic services. And I would say to you, Mr. President, there's no bigger threat to service delivery at a local level in South Africa than an ANC government coupled with ANC cadre deployment. Now that the voters have now said the same thing around South Africa, Mr. President, you must now concede that the policy of cadre deployment is directly responsible for the collapse of local government service delivery and must surely now be abandoned.
The Honourable the President.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. It's quite clear that, well, thank you very much for the concession you made at the beginning, but it's quite clear that Honourable Steenhuis just misses listening to me whenever I speak. I don't know what I'm going to do.
In 500 meters, turn left onto Matthews Making Road.
Honourable Mervyn Dix, you are not going to do that. The President is on the floor. Honourable Dix.
And I was...
You may proceed.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The answer is very simple and straightforward to Honourable Steenhuis, that if he has been listening to everything that I've been saying throughout the period, where we've been saying we want capable people to be put in positions, and they should be put in those positions on merit and on their capability to do the work. And it should not be because you are handsome or your ability to speak English or you're good looking or whatever. It should be because you are good at what you do. I'm making you blush, I'm sorry. Never thought it would get to this. So in the end, we want capable people to be put in positions throughout various areas in our country so that we can deliver good service to our people. It's as simple as all that. Anything else really begins to dilute the real meaning of what capability is all about. Thank you, Honourable Speaker.
The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable I.M. Groenewald from the Chamber.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable President, with reference to the question asked by the Honourable Member, I would like to disagree with the statement that hung coalition governments are unstable and a threat to service delivery. Coalition governments are the future of South Africa governance and can be a turnaround point for service delivery and the economy of South Africa. Germany is a good example of this. We saw, however, in Tshwane that the provincial government intervened illegally to bring about instability. What guarantees can you as President and President of the ANC give that there will be no interference by provincial and national ANC administrations which will attempt to hamper the functioning of coalition governments? Thank you, Speaker.
The Honourable the President.
I spoke a few days ago when we were receiving President Kenyatta, when one of the journalists asked me an offline question or from the right field, and he wanted to know about my own views on the functionability, if I can use such a word, of hung or coalition governments. And I said that we are still new. This is a new terrain for us. Our democracy is still very young, and we are yet to fully experience the full effect of coalition governments. And what we have experienced in the recent past has not been anything that can give us great confidence. But having said that, I do not believe that we should not look to a future where there would be coalition governments. And what we should seek to do is to make coalition governments work. And if we can embrace that type of future and say, yes, future that we see evolving in many other countries, particularly in your more developed democracy countries, is that the future is coalition governments. If not, then there's a continuous gyration, changing of government on an ongoing basis. You see what happens in the US, one party comes in, next party goes out, next party comes in, and so forth. And in other countries, it's more sort of permanent coalitions. Speaking to the former Prime Minister of Sweden the other day, he said, sometimes we have a gridlock because we almost have a permanent coalition type of dispensation. The same thing is happening in Germany. They are still negotiating months after their own election. So this is new terrain. We're traversing new terrain. Sometimes it will be unstable. Sometimes it will give rise to stability. And what we should focus our eyes on is that all this should not hamper service delivery. Our main focus must ensure that there is service delivery. Yes, the notion that when you have a majority government in local government, even at national level, that's when you have the wherewithal to be able to deliver more effectively. There is that notion, but at the same time, there is also the view that when you have a coalition government, you are able to sort of sharpen each other's wits and be able to ensure that corruption is reduced and the lack of capability is done away with, and you are able to ensure that there is good service delivery. So the jury, as far as I'm concerned, is still out. One cannot, at this point in time, say one system will work better than the other. And let us hope that with these coalitions that have been struck now, that they will function for the full 5 years as well as it is expected. For me, the worst would be when there are disruptions, instability. I can say that from government level, we will not be seeking to disrupt or destabilize the governments at local government. We accept that the people have spoken and the will of the people must be executed, and we will be supportive of the governments that have been put in place. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. We now proceed to question number 16. It has been asked by the Honorable MP Gallo. The Honorable the President.
Honorable Speaker, the Integrated Resource Plan 2019 is the guiding document for energy supply planning between now and 2030. In developing the IRP 2019, the energy planners took into account security of electricity supply, protection of the environment, and the need to reduce carbon emissions as well. The reduction of carbon emissions as envisaged in the IRP 2019 is aligned with the emissions trajectory in our updated nationally determined contribution, which sets out a target for a reduction in our greenhouse gas emissions by the year 2025, as well as by the year 2030. Now, it is projected that full implementation of the IRP 2019, along with existing energy efficiency and green transport policies, will result in emissions in line with the revised nationally determined contribution that we adopted prior to COP26. The IRP 2019 provides for the decommissioning of a number of coal-fired power plants that have reached or are reaching the end of their lives. The pace and scale of decommissioning coal-fired power stations will be determined by the need to maintain security of energy supply and the extent to which financial support, as I was saying earlier, for a just energy transition that will enable a higher level of ambition. In terms of both the IRP 2019 and the revised nationally determined contribution, coal will remain part of the energy mix beyond 2030, even as the share of renewable energy resources significantly increases. I think that's important for us to note, and this is what we've also made clear to our international partners. We've just built two mega coal power stations, Kusile and Medupi, and their life is quite much longer. And there are, however, a number of coal-fired power stations that have to be closed down because they have reached the end of their own life. So there has to be a clear balance. And right now, we've got 45,000 megawatts installed capacity in our country, and the majority of that is coal-powered. And so therefore, even as we bring in renewables, none of them are ever going to reach that level of 45,000 within a short space of time. So in the end, we are going to have the two living side by side as we move on our trajectory to reduce fossil fuel utilization. The Integrated Resource Plan is a living document that takes into account changing circumstances and the anticipated needs of our country into the future. And the Integrated Resource Plan looks at all that. As you well know, it looks at all the sources of our energy. That's why we say we've got a mixed energy supply type of dispensation or generation dispensation, relying on, yes, wind, sun, as well as nuclear, hydro, and fossil fuels, and gas. So the whole mix then has to be put in place, and we need to create a balance as we move on. So we will never want to do anything that is going to be detrimental to our energy source as well as to the needs of our economy and the needs of our people going forward. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. Honorable members, due to bereavement, Mr. Gallo is unable to take the first supplementary question, and Mr. Jafta from the AIC is also unavailable to take charge of the first supplementary question. Accordingly, Rule 137.10b will apply, and I will only allow 1 minute for each of the 4 supplementary questions. I will now recognize the Honorable OMC Mautwe to ask the first supplementary question.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Mr. President, it is now clear that the ruling party and the cabinet it leads has taken a resolution to hand over strategic state-owned entities in the energy, rail, and water, and soon this will be the case for sanitation as well. Whether you call it selling non-strategic assets or privatization, at the end of the day, President, you are handing over public assets to many people who handle you. Now, Mr. President, we hear you and the Minister of Enterprise and the incompetent white CEO of Eskom talk about a lot of transition to renewable energy.
Mautwe, there's a point of order. Honorable Member Mautwe. Yes, Honorable Khatebe.
Honorable Speaker, I'm rising on Rule 84.
Yes.
The member has just used an offensive language that the president is handled by some people. And then she must use Rule 85 to substantiate the matter. Thank you.
Honorable Mautwe, will you withdraw?
I will substantiate, Speaker.
Honorable Mautwe.
But withdraw what? Speaker.
Honorable Mautwe, will you please withdraw that offensive language which is
But that's
directed?
not what the member is asking for, Speaker. He's not asking me to withdraw. He's asking me to substantiate. And I'm saying I'm willing to do that.
Asking you to withdraw, Honorable Mautwe.
Speaker, is Honorable Mkhalipi here?
I can see you are Honorable Kalipi, but I haven't given you an opportunity to speak. Sit down.
I'm raising my hand, Speaker, because I want a clarity. What she must withdraw? Because we are supposed to tell her that she must withdraw 1, 2, 3. What she must withdraw?
Honorable Member Mkhalipi, you really are out of order because I did not grant you an opportunity to speak. Please don't do that. Honorable Zakute.
I'm fine with your ruling, Honorable
Thank
Speaker.
you very much. I insist then that Honorable Mautwe, that statement was directed to an individual and not to a party. Will you withdraw that statement?
Honorable Speaker, I want to withdraw. Which one? Which one must I withdraw?
I'll cut you off, you know.
No,
That's
but I'm
a warning.
asking clarity, Speaker.
Said this tries to you, and you know exactly what to withdraw. And I now give you the last opportunity, withdraw, or you leave the system.
I'm gonna withdraw, but the Speaker, I'm gonna take you to. I'm gonna follow it up because it's incorrect that you're asking me to withdraw. And when I ask you for clarity, humbly so, you are unable to give me the much needed clarity.
No,
So,
why?
of me asking the question, I withdraw.
Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much. Now, unconditional. Unconditional, the most important thing. Thank you very much.
Now, Mr. President, we hear you and the Minister of Public Enterprise and the incompetent.
You are gone. Your system has thrown you out. Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable.
I'm here, Speaker.
The Honorable, the President.
Honorable Speaker, I'm still here. I'm asking a question.
You were gone.
Oh, okay. Let me finish, Speaker.
Finish.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Speaker. We also know that ESCOM once had capacity to develop renewable energy because of number of successful projects, but we don't hear you talk about how ESCOM fit into the just transition process beside misguided rhetoric about closing down coal power stations. How much of the 131 billion pledged by the imperialist former colonizers is going to benefit ESCOM? We don't want long stories, President. Just give us a number. And President, maybe we must discipline the speaker again and remove her. Please, she's a problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mautwe. The Honorable, the President.
Speaker, I have my hand up, Speaker. Can we be recognized?
Honorable Mkhalipi, you have a tendency of just barging in without saying point of order. Call for a point of order and I will give you attention. I'll grant you an opportunity to raise your point of order. But if you just barge in, not, thank you very much. The Honorable, the President.
Speaker, point of order.
Thank you, Honorable Mkhalipi. You may take
Speaker, I just want to, I'm raising a point of order the way you are running this parliament, Speaker. The member is correct to say, please clarify what she must withdraw. And it's your duty to take through the member of the things that she said that is unparliamentary. But you can't just say to a member, just withdraw, you know what you have done. So that is a point of order that I'm just asking you to reconsider because it's unfair to our member when you just expect her to withdraw something that she does not even know, Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mkalipi. I have ruled on the matter, and we now proceed. The Honorable, the President.
Honorable Speaker, the question that the Honorable Member has raised is the subject of the very next question that I'm supposed to answer. But just in short and maybe 2 sentences, a good portion of the funding that will come through will be utilized to support ESCOM's just transition plans. And you may well want us to elaborate more in detail about what they are. I think in time that will be the case, because in the end, as I said in my main reply earlier, ESCOM has embraced the renewable energy sector and will be entering that sector and playing a key role. ESCOM has the full capabilities of being able to do so, and it is going to implement also retraining and reskilling workers, and this is going to be played out in the pilot, one of the pilot initiatives, as one of the power stations is about to be decommissioned, and discussions have been going on, including the Climate Change Commission that I set up, as well as unions, communities. So all that work is underway as we speak now. I am confident that whatever funding that we will get will enable us to move forward in a much more confident manner and enable ESCOM to embrace renewable energy in a way that I think all of us have always wanted to see, because they have the greatest capability of generating electricity. And we were delighted when in the end ESCOM decided that this is the direction that they want to go, and I think they are well placed to do so. And in doing so, they'll make sure that it is a just transition that takes into account the interests of workers, interests of our communities as well, without any fail. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable S. Luzipo from the Chamber.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, President. Let's appreciate that you are here today, and the doubting Thomases can see no one is helping you. Honorable President, what contingency intervention plans are in place to mitigate against adverse impact of the coal power plant's retirement on jobs and our economy? Should a just transition proceed, note without delay, if there will be such, in particular in the context of the current energy challenges? This obviously is informed by the fact that coal is still predominantly used to generate electricity at a scale and pace that the financial resources can be generated in line with the IRP 2019 going forward. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. What this new moment presents to us is an opportunity to navigate our way through the transition, and a transition which I believe is pregnant with a lot of opportunities. Opportunities such as setting up new sectors of our economy. The specter of electric cars is a wonderful opportunity which our country must grasp with both hands. Cars are now going to be moving towards being electric in many parts of the world, and we are a renowned car manufacturing base. And the other day I went to the Eastern Cape and we were launching a car that's made by Toyota, which is a hybrid. Both there's fossil fuel as well as electric. And more cars in the world will become electric powered. and that brings us to a new sector. It could also mean battery manufacturing. But the other important sector is the utilization of the very wonderful elements that we've got in our country, which are endowments, our weather, our location, and where we are able to advance towards the hydrogen sector of the economy. And indeed, manufacturing and fabricating a whole number of parts and implements that are utilized in renewable energy installations. These are all new sectors of the economy that we need to advance to. And it is for that reason that we felt that when an offer like this is made, we need to look at it without obviously making it detrimental to us, but we should be ahead of the curve and be able to take up an offer like this before it, the funding runs dry. And maybe we will be a trailblazer. We've been, as a country, a trailblazer in many things. And when it comes to the just transition, we could possibly be a trailblazer and put in place transition initiatives that will be of a cutting-edge nature. And as we embark on our own or go ahead with our own developmental processes. So this offers us a great, great opportunity, and it's an opportunity which I think we should not fob off or just ignore. We should go into it with all that South Africans can take up. And I'm quite excited about all this because many, many countries have not yet reached the same level where we are. Now, the pleasing part is that many players in the private sector, many of our companies are already way ahead of that curve. They are already thinking and beginning to do things that should be leading us there. They are already utilizing hydrogen type of power to drive their vehicles, big vehicles for that matter. And we have a good supply of platinum which can be used for generating energy as well. So the opportunities are quite a lot, and all we need to do is to embrace them. Now, as government, we should not be lagging behind some of those technological opportunities that the private sector, our own private sector, is already moving forward with. We should be out there to support them, to draft regulations that will not impede their ability to be world leaders. And this is a great opportunity for South Africa to be a world leader in hydrogen energy generation. So great opportunities lie out there. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable, the Leader of the Opposition from the Chamber.
Thank you. Mr. President, you're saying so many things I agree with today. It's hard to be the opposition today. Let me say this then, and I would agree with you. I do listen, and I've heard you say single supplier and generator is a problem, and that you've also welcomed the fact that capable metropolitan governments and municipalities can play a role in alleviating the electricity crisis. I've also heard you talk about the regulations that get in the way. So may I then ask you, Mr. President, whether you would consider re-looking at the regulations that have recently been released by the Minister, which leaves the ministerial discretion to determine whether a municipality can do all these things. I think that we should rather look at a set of criteria that that municipality should meet and then to be able to qualify, not leaving it up to somebody's discretion. I think you remove the ideological logjam out of the way then, and you focus on capability. Would you be prepared to have a chat about those regulations?
The Honorable, the President.
My answer has to be yes. It is yes because I'd like to remove as many regulatory impediments as possible so that we can free the key players in our economy to do what they do best. And if, for instance, municipalities want to generate energy, and some regulation stands in the way, and some discretion stands in the way, we should be prepared to look at that and to be able to free also our municipalities. We have seen the dangers of a highly monopolized electricity generation dispensation. It's very dangerous for our country because when a power station breaks down in Mpumalanga or Limpopo, then it's just total darkness for our country throughout. So being able to have generation on a disaggregated basis and without too many strictures would be the ideal situation that I would support. So yes, the answer, I'm prepared to look at that.
That brings us to the last supplementary question, and it will be asked by the Honorable M. Hlengwa.
Ngiyathokoza kakhulu, Somlomo. Honorable President, the load shedding phenomenon has been with us since 2008. Ngangisewumfanyana sengiyaguga manje. But Honorable President, on a serious note, at the heart of all the things we're spoken about today is financial management consistent with the law. We are speaking about an ESCOM with an irregular expenditure of 37 billion rands, the construction of Medupi, which has escalated and will now cost us 234 billion rands. Gusile has been escalated to be 161 billion rands, and they are all way past their initial deadlines. You're speaking about repeat audit outcomes for ESCOM without any particular resolve to turn things around. You're speaking about excessive use and heightened use of expansions and deviations. Medupi and Gusile combined will now cost us just over 450 billion rands. Mr. President, the question then becomes, what is it that will be the key primary focus of your government to ensure that beyond the breaking down of ESCOM into three parts, that they return onto a trajectory of prudent financial management? ESCOM has become a runaway train, anchored in high levels of arrogance and an inability to listen. Mr. President, if we don't solve that problem, none of your noble plans will actually come to fruition. And hindsight is the best sight. And the figures I give tell the story, the horror story of why things have to change. Thank you.
The Honorable the President.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Hlengwa, I couldn't agree with you more. Things have to change. And as we restructure ESCOM, we expect that the various components of ESCOM will work much more flawlessly, much more effectively, and their finances will be better managed, and debt levels will be brought down and be properly managed, and that there will be focused leadership, both at the management level and at the board level. And that is precisely one of the derivatives that we expect to get from this restructuring. I am sorry that it is taking so long because there are quite a number of other regulatory and other legal processes that have to be gone into. In my books, this should have been done some time ago. We should have had now a disaggregated ESCOM linked at the top, at the holding level, but at the operational level, functioning in the way that we had envisaged, with the transmission being wholly owned by government, and with the generation having a number of generators, ESCOM being, of course, the dominant one, but having really good competition from other power producers, and the distribution functioning even better than it is now. ESCOM is a distributor, so are municipalities, and in the end, some of the independent power producer will also be distributors. So in that way, you'll have an energy architecture, or energy architecture that will, really be able to support this economy, as well as to support the livelihoods of our people. So In the end, if we have something like that, we should see the end and the back of the malfeasance and the overspending that we have seen, as you say, has been a runaway train. So I expect that things will be a lot better and that ESCOM, or yes, ESCOM indeed, will also be much, much, much better managed. Right now, we are on the way to transforming and restructuring ESCOM in a way where, yes, we are taking pain, quite a bit of pain, but I see this pain coming to an end one of these days as we implement all the plans that we've got. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. We will now, honourable members, move to question number 17 that has been asked by the Honourable V.T. Malinga. The Honourable President.
Honourable House Chair, a significant proportion of funding offered by the International Partner Group countries is expected to be used for ESCOM's just transition plans, as I was saying earlier. The shutdown of coal-powered stations must be accompanied by significant investment in new generation capacity as well as the network to promote energy security for our country. In particular, the funds will be utilized to support ESCOM's plans to repower, as I was saying, to repurpose coal plants that are shutting down with renewables, battery storage, as well as gas. ESCOM aims to add 8.5 gigawatts of renewable energy over the next 10 years and will require international financial support for this investment. This financing will not and cannot be used for financing the legacy debt that ESCOM has. The electricity sector contributes 41% of South Africa's greenhouse gas emissions and is the quickest route to decarbonizing South Africa with the greatest impact in the short term. This process is an important opportunity to build our industrial capacity as well as to create new jobs in new sectors. We can maximize the impact of this new investment by ensuring that local inputs are used in construction and by implementing strategies and incentives to encourage global players to localize their operations. What we've been doing hitherto is that many of these independent power producers have been foreign firms that have developed these technologies in other locales. And they come here, and in the beginning they were bringing nearly everything here. And with our policy of localization, we are putting pressure on many players in our economy to localize so that some of these parts and products can be made here. Now, a transition to a decarbonized economy must also address, as I was saying, the needs of workers as well and communities. The funding must be used for targeted programs so that there is very good skilling. Now, ESCOM has already begun to work on a reskilling plan and has entered into cooperation agreements with the Department of Trade and Industry and Competition, as well as the Manufacturing Circle. Been working with Sasol, with Anglo-American, with Exaro and Siriti to ensure, among others, a collective drive to growing industrialization and local manufacturing. ESCOM has commenced its first demonstration project for the just energy transition at the Komati Power Station, which I was talking about as a pilot, in addition to expanding capacity through solar, battery storage, and gas. The Komati Power Station plans include opportunities for local community involvement in the agrivoltaic solution and the assembly of containerized microgrids. the transition to a low-carbon economy and a climate-resilient society holds enormous potential, as I was saying, for our economic growth and development and job creation. So in a way, this is the new world beckoning, the new energy world beckoning, and as South Africans, we should not be left behind. We should embrace it and make sure that we grasp all the opportunities. And as I was saying, various of our companies have already started moving in that direction. Government cannot be left behind. We must move in tune with our various economic players and give guidance and support and create that conducive environment for them to be able to operate in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Malinga.
Thank you, House Chair. Honourable President, good afternoon. Given the compelling reasons why Eskom urgently needs to transition from coal to renewable energies, what assurance does the government have that the offered 131 billion in grants and loans from the 4 countries will come through? And in what ways will the 131 billion investment ameliorate Eskom's high electricity tariffs that are expensive for most South African citizens? Thank you, Chair. Thank you, President.
The Honourable President.
Honourable House Chair, I believe that in many ways the first part of the question has been addressed with regard to how we will navigate our way around this just transition and what the money, if we do finally sign off and accept it, will be utilized for. I just said that a minute ago. But the other part of the question, which is what impact would all this have on tariffs? And one expects that as we move more and more to renewables, the renewable energy is already proving to be getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And when we started, it was much more expensive, and this was so well explained by Minister Mantashe, who said that we were paying X amount of money at a higher level. It's now come down quite significantly, right up to, I think, 47 cents or so. And I expect that with more installation of renewable energy, we will find that the pricing will come down more and more. And that is bound to have an impact on the tariffs. So one of the benefits that we will be getting from renewables and clean energy is the cheaper energy for all. And if nothing else, this is one of the biggest and the best outcomes, because we'll be utilizing the sun, the wind, and yes, hydro and various other capabilities, hydrogen and all that. And that must, in the end, fall into the cheaper energy category. And that is going to fuel economic growth as well, because energy has become one of the most expensive items on any company's income statement, income and expenditure statement. And if we can reduce the cost of energy, we will be better off. A number of other companies, when they look, particularly offshore companies who have great choice to go anywhere in the world, when they look at a country, the first question they ask is, what is the cost of energy? And we started off at a cheaper level years ago. We've now moved up to being one of the more expensive energy cost countries. And if we can embrace renewables, that should start coming down, and we become more and more of an investment destination. And that is where we should be going. So I'm hoping that the derivative we will get from utilizing more renewables is cheaper energy, which will be good for all of us. Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, just days after you welcomed the offer of the 131 billion in grants and loans to fund this important transition from coal, your Minister of Energy called for African nations to push back against decarbonisation and renewables. And this led to a very nasty media house calling him a fossil fuel dinosaur. Mr. President, how do you explain your government's position in that?
No. Sorry.
Please proceed, Honourable
I should
President.
wait for you.
Please proceed.
Okay. No, thank you, House Chair. Minister Mantashe is not a fossil fuel dinosaur. Just as you look at him, you'll see that he's as lively as any one of us. So Minister Mantashe is a coal miner. His love for coal is deep, and, and his love for coal miners is even deeper. So when you listen to Minister Mantashe, have that at the back of your mind, that he's a coal miner and he's also a person who loves coal miners deeply. However, having said that, Minister Mantashe's position on the issue of transition is no different. In fact, it is very well aligned with our position as government. And I think people should listen to Minister Mantashe very carefully. What he has been saying is that we need to navigate our way through the transition very, very carefully, because we've got workers and we've got communities. And as we do so, we need to ensure that no one is left behind. And he is the owner of the IRP 2019. As a minister, he's there to implement it. And the IRP 2019 sets it very clearly out where our direction is, and he cannot be and is not advocating a different direction for our transition towards renewable energy. So he is both a lover of coal miners, he's a coal man, but he's also an advocate, a clear advocate for our transition to move forward through renewables. So there is just no difference between Minister Mantashe and us in government. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Maotwe.
Thank you very much. President, the coal mining sector employs over 90,000 workers, and 70% of our energy needs come directly from coal. The country has coal reserves that can continue satisfying our energy needs for the next 100 years. There's currently no renewable energy capacity that can replace what we get from coal currently in the country. With that in mind, what necessitated the announcement by the President of the US that they will give us a loan to transition from coal to renewable energy? And how are you planning to make use of that loan in a manner that will not make us beholden to the US, taking into account the practical limitations of renewables in this country and the socio-economic impacts that will result from abandoning coal? Thank you.
The Honourable President.
Honourable House Chair, I do believe that I have answered that question extensively today. 4 times, as Honourable Steenhuisen is whispering to me. I have answered it extensively and I have not tripped over.
House Chair.
Honourable Member, the President is still on the floor. Why are you rising? Honourable Member.
I am, however, willing and prepared to repeat and say that we have no choice but to navigate our way through this transition. the utilization of fossil fuels should never be seen as just a danger to countries in the northern part of the world. It is also a danger to us. We have, in accepting the impact that climate change is having on our own country and our own region, we have decided that yes, we will make it clear that we are prepared to move away from fossil fuels to renewables, but in doing so, we have to go through a transition, and a transition that is going to ensure that it is a transition that does not leave anyone behind, make sure that our workers, our communities are properly also accommodated and they benefit. And in any event, some of our power stations are coming to an end. Their lives are coming to an end. Komati is just one, and that is exactly where we are now beginning to pilot a process that will embed the transition that we need to embark upon even much more effectively, so that we can see whether this transition is the type that we can spread around the country. And we have also said that it is going to be impossible to close down every power station in our country because it is going to take us some time. However, we must make it clear that we've got to move towards renewables, and we must also be pleased that Eskom has embraced this and is already beginning to do a number of things. And we must also be pleased that a number of South African companies have also made their position very clear that they are going to move towards renewables. It could be the mines, it could be various big manufacturing entities. They have embraced this transition that we've got to move to. And I've also said that from a health point of view, we have a huge challenge. We have no choice but to embrace this. So in the end, we are in a situation where our choices are limited. We therefore have to chart a new path. And this is a path, as I've been saying, Honorable Member, that has a number of opportunities. It is a path that we should not be afraid to traverse because the opportunities are there. We must go and unlock those opportunities, and we can be trailblazers in the world and once again demonstrate to the world that we can do things and we can do them better. We as a country were the first to extract oil from coal, and it's a technology that we are envied for around the world. And in this regard to moving towards hydrogen, moving towards electric cars, is something that we can demonstrate very, very clearly to all and sundry that South Africa can lead. So as I said, new economic sectors beckon, and this is not the time to try and move back and be like fossil fuels or fossils ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable President. The last supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable A.S. Buthelezi.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. Honourable President, Eskom's current problem is that it is, as we all know, the sole entity that produces power in South Africa. It appears to have no interest in becoming profitable and sustainable, as it merely accumulates debt and pays lip service to financial management and accountability. The best model for Eskom would be to integrate into public-private partnerships with local communities, which the President has already alluded to, so that the communities have ownership and a vested interest in the success of the utility. I would like to know, Mr. President, in detail, what additional jobs over and above the current employment in the energy sector will be created with the introduction of renewable energy whether South Africa has sufficient skills to build, manage, and maintain the structures, and if not, what programs in secondary or tertiary schools has government put into place to address these skills shortages? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Honourable Member, I also said yesterday to the honourable members who asked follow-up questions, a supplementary question is one question. It's not a new question with sub-questions under it, but you may respond to the part that you wish to respond to, Honourable President.
Thank you. So I can pick and choose. And this is now the 5th time that I will be trying to explain all this. However, I should say the honourable member has actually highlighted some interesting aspects, particularly when it comes to skills. And obviously she wants to know in detail what are the new jobs that are going to be created. I'm afraid I will not be able, standing here now, to say these are the details of the new jobs. All I've been trying to say all afternoon is to say there are a number of new sectors that are going to be opened. And they are going to give rise to a number of jobs that can be created. Jobs in manufacturing of the implements or the products that will be utilized in renewable power generation. Quite a number of these we've been importing from offshore. Now with our localization program, which is beginning to have traction, much as a number of people have been criticizing it, and we found that more and more as we talk about localization and spreading the word about localization, a number of companies are waking up and saying, actually, indeed, it is better to localize. And some of them are actually caught up in the supply chain challenges that already exist in the world. And they are now saying, we'd rather make means or efforts to manufacture locally. And so quite a lot of localization, in my view, is beginning to be spawned all around. So there will be manufacturing jobs. Industrialization will be boosted because as new sectors come up, industrialists will come to the fore because they'll see a great opportunity for making new products, making new creations, and of course making money. And funding hopefully will also become available. So that immediately spawns a number of industries. And you will find that, one company makes one part of a pylon or whatever, a blade or turbine or whatever, and another company makes another part, and all of them can then grow together and be able to produce the various implements that will be utilized in the renewable energy space. Hydrogen, I've said repeatedly, is another opportunity, and the fuel cells that we can utilize from platinum is another opportunity. So all these will come to the fore, and business people will also participate. And yes, we expect that as the transition is being navigated, we will find that ESCOM, for starters, will be able to enter into PPPs with a number of other role players. And government will also be standing by to give the assistance and the support wherever possible. But the Honourable Member then spoke about another area which we need to pay heed and attention to, which is the skills. Is our education system going to be well attuned to producing skilled young people to be able to take up all these opportunities? I can say that already a number of the companies that are seeing a future in all this are already beginning to say to us that we now will want to participate with you in the creation of courses and curricula which will lead to the training of people in all these sectors. So, with regard to schools and to TVET colleges, I see a process where the new skills will be created, and therefore, working together with our enterprises, we should be able to create well-trained people. And as I said, part of the money is going to be used for retraining, reskilling, and upskilling. And it will also be used for proper training. So it's going to be a wonderful virtuous circle of development and of success and progress, because we will want to leave no one behind, and we will want to train our young people to be serious players in this field as well. Thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable President. Honorable members, the last question has been asked by the Honorable Mutle to the Honorable President. The Honorable President.
Honorable Chair, House Chair, during the course of 2020, the Presidency received several complaints about the perceived failure of the Department of Military Veterans to provide services to military veterans. Furthermore, a group of marchers called the Liberation Struggle War Veterans marched to the Union buildings on the 10th of November in 2020 and presented a memorandum of grievances to the Presidency. In response, I called for a high-level briefing on the plight of military veterans, the support package that military veterans are entitled to, as prescribed by the Military Veterans Act, as well as gaps and shortcomings that there may be. Following this, I appointed a presidential task team on military veterans, which is chaired by the Deputy President, to engage with military veterans on their challenges as well as their grievances. Since its establishment in November 2020, the Presidential Task Team has held several consultative engagements with various military veterans associations and a number of intergovernmental stakeholders as well. Some in housing, in health, in education, yes, and the Department of Military Veterans as well. Progress has been registered in the following issues. One, the review of Military Veterans Act is ongoing and expected to be taken for public comments in early 2022, and it is anticipated that the amendment bill will be tabled to Cabinet and Parliament in 2022. The amendment will deal with, amongst other things, the definition of a military veteran, a policy shift towards the non-statutory force members, and the provision of health care, housing, and burial benefits where appropriate to dependents and surviving spouses of military veterans. Secondly, the process of restructuring the Department of Military Veterans has been initiated with the approval of the service delivery model and the development of a proposed structure. The proposed structure will be finalized upon the completion of the amendment of the bill to ensure that the reviewed structure supports the new mandate of the Department of Military Veterans. Thirdly, provincial offices have been capacitated to assist military veterans at provincial level. This was one of the key complaints that military veterans had, that they don't receive sufficient service, and that we needed to capacitate their provincial offices so that they don't have to travel all the way to Tshwane to get their matters addressed. Fourthly, a moratorium should be placed moratorium on applications for educational support has been lifted, and the Department of Military Veterans is now receiving and processing new applications that come from military veterans as well as their dependents for education opportunities. Fifthly, consultations are underway on the costing and funding of the pension policy. The target date for payment is the 1st of April 2022. Sixthly, which is after the budget. Sixthly, the verification panel continues with the verification of military veterans who are non-statutory force members. The total number of processed applications on the 16th of November 2021 was 2,549. Seventh, the Department of Military Veterans has developed a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Sports, Arts and Culture and its agencies to assist with the repatriation of the remains, erection of monuments in host countries and memorialization of fallen heroes. Eighth, the Department of Military Veterans is repositioning its skills development and empowerment program to ensure that military veterans participate in all government programs that can create jobs and business opportunities for them. The department is forming partnerships with various SETAs and other state organs to assist with the various skills development programs. Now, the challenges that are faced by military veterans are many, and they are also very complex, and will require a common approach from all parts of government. A society like ours, which owes its freedom to the sacrifices made by these gallant daughters and sons of our country, must do everything it can to ensure that military veterans and their children are able to enjoy the fruits of the freedom that they helped to bring about. These, in the main, are people who were even prepared to sacrifice their own lives to ensure that the democratic order that we have in our country is installed. So we ought to give them the consideration and the respect, as well as ensure that we look after their well-being as much as we possibly can. This is something that I am determined to ensure it happens. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable President. The first supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Mutle.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair, and thanks to the President for that comprehensive response. In view of your response, that this matter should be the responsibility of government as a whole, not only the Department of Military Veterans. Will the President ensure that government set aside a reasonable percentage of their procurement plan for the purpose of empowering military veterans? While the department is resolving the database issue, and consideration should be made to prepare military veterans for those set-aside procurement plan. I thank you, Honorable President and House Chair.
Thank you. The Honorable President.
Honorable House Chair, yes, we are determined to do as much as we can to empower our military veterans. And in my reply, I spoke about one of the efforts that we are involved in on entrepreneurship, also on skills training through our SETAs. And we are obviously so keen that where the military veterans have the capability to take up procurement opportunities, they should be brought in and they should also be able to participate in that. The important part for us is that they need to be empowered, either through skills and through entrepreneurship. They should have a sense that, yes, they are active participants, yes, in the economy of our country, and where there are procurement opportunities, they should also be able to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable President. The second supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and we certainly welcome the justice that's going to finally come for military veterans in South Africa. And I think you can see the effectiveness of a presidential task team. And so my question is that if this issue has received a presidential task team, why do we still not have a presidential task team for the July unrest that happened in KwaZulu-Natal? There was a hostage situation in Irene, but the residents in KwaZulu-Natal and the citizens there were held hostage by warring factions of the governing party, and they've had to make do with a South African Human Rights Commission hearing. Now, that hostage situation is ongoing because thousands of jobs have been lost, and that economy is still being held hostage to business that's been scared off. Mr. President, 4.5 months later, no high-profile arrests, none of the main instigators who were fingered in that particular incident have been taken into custody. Can we honestly say to the people of KZN that government...
Order, honourable members, and also those on the virtual platform. The Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. That clearly is a new question. Much as it is good, it's a new one. And all I would want to say in this regard, I appointed a panel that is investigating all this. The panel has been busy at work, and they will soon be reporting to me. They had expected to report a week or two ago. They've asked for an extension. They will certainly be giving me their report shortly. It is upon receipt of that report that I'll be able to have a much more globular look at precisely some of the failures, and some of which can still be carrying on, and we will then be able to determine precisely what action needs to be taken. So let us wait for all that. That is broad in terms of the investigations that they have been effecting, so let's wait for that to come. Thank you, House Chair.
Thank you, Honourable President. The third supplementary question will be asked by the Honourable Mente.
Thank you very much, House Chair. President, will you attribute the latest hostage situation and the anger of the military veterans to the inefficiency of the presidential task team and their delay? Earlier on, you mentioned that you started the task team last year. Most recently, we had this hostage situation. Is that due to the fact that the deputy president who is in charge of the task team was absent for a while due to ill health? And what systems now did you put in place in terms of leadership of the task team? And what assurance do you give this parliament and this country that we are not going to see the anger of the military veterans being exacerbated by the inefficiency of the task team and the delay or the laissez-faire attitude of the presidency and the ministry office in terms of attending to the military veterans' grievances? Thank you.
Honourable President.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. When I set up this task team, it was out of a deep concern arising from the complaints that military veterans had articulated, and the Deputy President spent a lot of time consulting with them, working through the various issues with the military veterans, and took the trouble to listen to them. I also finally met them, and as we met, we mapped out what their needs are and how they wanted their needs addressed, and we reached very good consensus, and the Deputy President continues to be seized with this matter, and he's going to make sure that it is properly rounded off. He's going to be finalizing it and giving a report to me, which may well go beyond some of the issues that I articulated here. So this matter is receiving the highest consideration with a great deal of seriousness, because I do treat it very, very seriously. and would like our military veterans to have a deep sense of knowing that, yes, we do care for them, and we want to do everything that is good by them. Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable President. And the last supplementary question will be asked by the Honorable Holomisa.
Our chairperson, Honorable President, we welcome the update. However, it is unlikely that anyone below age of 35 could have been active in the armed struggle as we knew it. Is it not advisable, as part of the task team's terms of reference, that they establish with the leaders of the liberation movement that the names of the entire group of people who claim to be the veterans appear on the registries of the liberation movement? The events of the 14th of October cast a spotlight on the dangers of having quasi-military groups or private armies as we normally see them in the streets of South Africa. Thank you.
The Honorable President.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Honorable Holomisa, yes, you are absolutely right. We do need to be clear about the identity of our military veterans. One of the terms of reference of the task team is to do precisely that. They are involved in putting together a proper register of military veterans, which should be verified through and by the various liberation armies that we had. And so we will soon have a full identity list of everyone who claims to be a military veteran. I should say that not everyone who has claimed that title or that label is a military veteran. There are others who are just accompanying others. So we therefore have clarity. It's interesting.
Honorable President, my apologies. There's a procedural officer, Matakane, who is disrupting proceedings. It cannot be acceptable that a procedural officer is not paying attention to what's happening in the House. And I want that matter to be looked at and the National Assembly Secretary to deal with it decisively. You may proceed, Honorable President.
No, I was about to conclude and say that it's interesting that Honorable Holomisa, who is a military man himself, is even able to put a date or an age because he would know best the age cutoff point that should be ascribed to military veterans. So we are looking at that, and we will make sure that those who claim to be military veterans are true military veterans, and they are known by their own organizations. There are institutions that are absolutely clear on that. So once we have great clarity on that, we hope that we will be able to implement more fully all the matters that we need to implement and make sure that we give dignity and respect and recognition to those who were even prepared to die so that we may have freedom. Thank you, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you, Honorable President. That concludes questions to the President, and I want to thank the Honorable President. Thank you, honorable members. Honorable members, that concludes the business for the day, and the House is adjourned.
Thank you.